So let me first mention that the talk that I'm going to give is not really about damage detection or damage assessment. That's not what the focus is. It's what Jamie had mentioned, which is classification of the images. So about 5 years ago, we started working with machine learning and image classification and analyzing them for damage. And then what we did was we started talking to some reconnaissance mission field teams. And we said, wouldn't it be helpful if people could, in real time during a reconnaissance mission, be able to classify their images and see what they have so that they can organize them and they can understand what the situation is with the data that they have. So this is an outline of the talk that I'm going to give. We have 2 National Science Foundation grants in series that we're working on this problem. So first I'll talk a little bit about reconnaissance data, what we learned about it, what we learned about the machine learning problem, the challenges that are specific to that type of data, the tool that we've been working on, and brief mention of some other applications. So you guys all know about machine learning. We've been talking about it all day, right? The way that I'm going to just describe this for purposes of this lecture is to say, if you're a child and you don't know what is a dog or a cat, and someone keeps telling you, that's a dog, that's a cat, that's a dog, that's a cat, you get the output, but the child develops the ability to recognize those things, and they fill in this gap. So that in the future, they've built this tool, the process, and they can actually determine what's a dog or a cat, right? That's what we're trying to do. So we know that there's a lot of work that's been done with dogs and cats and apples and oranges and things like that for image classification. And these are easy problems, more or less, right? They took a long time to solve, but distinguishing between cats and dogs is a relatively easy question. Apples and oranges is a relatively easy question. Remember that what I'm talking about here is distinguishing between these things. It's a binary decision. If I throw a carrot into the mix, it doesn't know what to do with that. It may call it a dog or a cat. But when we look at disaster images, reconnaissance images, this is what we see. Okay, we see all sorts of images of all sorts of things. None of these were posed. There's not a camera that's put in a special place, usually, to take particular images. We do that in the lab, but we don't do that in the real world. We walk around with a camera and we take photos of things. And we take photos of things like watches and GPS, and we take photos of things like cars and animals and people. And so what that means is that these are unstructured, uncontrolled images that are difficult to deal with. So we've been trying to deal with that for about 5 years now, okay? Here's a typical data set from one building. So if you have a field mission, you could have 25 teams, each collecting 5 buildings a day for a week. Just a rough guess. So you would have hundreds, potentially, of buildings where you collected 100 or 200 images each. So this is just one case, and you can see the variety of images collected from this one particular building in Ecuador in 2016. So how do you do something with this so that an engineer could go back and look at it, probably a different person than the person who collected that data? How do you put these images into a structure so that someone could go back and understand it and learn from it so that we can develop better building codes? That's what we're trying to do. So the challenges, and I'm sure that there's more challenges, but these are the key ones that I thought of. The real world is messy, cluttered, and complex. It's not really that nice. We don't have dogs and cats. We don't have apples and oranges. We have lots and lots of unstructured and strange data. And there's a huge volume of this. It may not be big data in the computer science sense, but it's big data for us, right? Large volumes, hundreds of thousands eventually of images. If we look back historically, we've probably collected millions and millions of images as civil engineers. And they're all mixed together. And they're all on people's computers somewhere. Very few of them have made it into our reports, right? The data is usually collected in such a way that it's actually biased. If you think of any data that's collected, it's biased, right? We went into it with a goal in mind. The image content depends heavily on the data collector. So a structural engineer is going to collect structural data. Someone who focuses on non-structural components is going to collect non-structural components data. And they're not going to have all the other data, right? And most of the images contain damage. One of the speakers yesterday mentioned that as well, right? So if the images contain damage, then it's really hard to add to it the images that don't contain damage. And you need that for training, right? But for the real world, if we're going to give the tool to someone in the field who's going to use this, it has to work. It has to work on real world data. So that's one of the things we've always been focused on. So we've been focused on supervised training. We've been focused on taking images from the past, from the many, many events that people have gone on, manually labeling them with strict definitions. It's hard work, but it's necessary. So we have our ground truth labeled image sets that we use for training, and we categorize them in a way that is useful for field missions. That was our goal from the very beginning. And then we do training using convolutional neural networks, and we're able to estimate the classes of the different images. So we've been collecting data from all the different sources, from individuals, but also from all these different groups that are collecting data from these missions. The number of curated images that we have is about 95,000. But overall, we have about 500,000 images from all different sources. A lot of those are wind, and they're just, we haven't had a chance to organize those yet. They're just a tremendous number of images from wind events. We have some videos as well. We have at least 59 events. I didn't update that number, but I think it's a little bit more than that. But these are just samples of all the different images that have been collected during these events. And we've developed an ontology for organizing these data in a way that is useful for the person who wants to learn from these data. That was our goal, to try and understand what's in the data set and organize the data in that way so that people could use it. When possible, we include location information. Very few people actually include the GPS. They turn off the GPS in their cameras. So some of them we had to go back and find. But we also try to include as much as possible the event, the description of the event. And this is all put together in a tool that we call REO, which is the Automated Reconnaissance Image Organizer. So let me show you some videos. I hope these go through in Zoom pretty well. But these are, we just randomly selected, maybe it's not random, about 100 buildings. And we created a report of 100 buildings showing a variety of different types of data from a variety of different events, including all different types of structures. And this is one of the images. So this is from Peru, 2007. And the tool, the idea is, and I didn't show this in the video, but the idea is that you just grab your whole image set from that building and you drop it in. It takes about 1 second for each of these labels for each image. And then what it does is it returns to you an organized form, an organized report with every image that you dropped in from that building and the labels that are appropriate. It's not going to be perfect, right? Machine learning isn't perfect yet. Our data set can get bigger, we can do better on the training, but it's doing pretty well right now, okay, in terms of all these different categories. We have filters on the left, so if you pick a report and then you want to look at what are the columns that people took photos of in this building, you can just filter out everything else and just look at the columns. Or if you want to look at only the exterior images, you can pull those up. We also have a mapping tool. That's not my favorite thing to demonstrate, but you can see where all of the reports are on a map so that you can easily access them. If you want to look at a cluster of buildings that were nearby each other during a particular event, you could do that. So here's an example of just looking at columns from this one particular report. But what you could also do is you could look at columns across all of the reports, all 100 of the reports that you have. So you have 100 buildings in here, maybe you have 1,000 buildings. You filter it down to just look at the category for columns, and then you can say, I want to look at this report. So you click on a particular report, and then it takes you back to the entire set of buildings for that, or set of images for that particular building. One more thing that you can do, I did the demonstration earlier in the video, is that you can use Google, of course, and you can just drop the guy on the street view, so you can pull out a street view image of what it looked like the last time Google happened to collect data there. Okay. So here's GPS, for example. That's a category that everyone collects because it's a historically, before we had GPS on all our cameras, people just took a photo of that. It's an easy way to document. But it's confusing to some type of system that's only looking for buildings and damage. So what we also realized is that when people see these images, they need to know where was it collected in the building. If you want to understand the consequences of certain damage on a building, you need to know where it is. So one thing that we also did was we took the drawings. Usually people in the field will take photos of pieces of the drawings. And they get high resolution, but then they have 25 photos of drawings in pieces. And it's kind of hard to deal with those. So we developed a tool that would automatically paste the drawings back together so that we would have one big high resolution of every drawing. And we're working on the ability to take these photos and map them directly to where they were collected on the drawing. So you see an image, you can look exactly where it was on the drawing, or you see your drawing, and you can click on it and see what photos are relevant to that particular place. The next thing that we've been doing, sometimes you don't actually have drawings, but you want to know where you were when you took the photo. And sometimes you get the drawings in the field, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to create a sketch, which we can also use. But what we've been also working on lately is video odometry, so that as you walk, and this video should be working too, but as you walk through the building, you can actually synchronize the photos that you take with your camera with a head-mounted camera that is just collecting video and creating a 3D reconstruction of that path that you take. So it only gets the path that you take, and then you can still link it to where it was collected. So those are some of the things that we've been working on for image classification. And I'm not going to take any more time because we took a long setup here. We're working on a variety of other things. Some are more advanced than others, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that if you're interested. Let me just mention again, this was funded by the National Science Foundation, it still is. The CRISP Center at Purdue provided some funding for a student on the wind engineering side to look at that. Most of our work has been on earthquake, I should admit. We have a lot of data contributors from historical sources, and there's also some individuals here. And this has been a team effort of students and other faculty and postdocs at Purdue. And let me just close by saying that if we're going to really understand these images and allow them to be used over and over by other researchers, we need to organize them. So in order to extract the information, we need to put them in a form that people can use it, okay? And that, I think, is something that we're not doing as well as we could. But this automation is here. Let's use it, right? Automation is something that we can benefit from today with this. So go collect more data. That's my point. Talk to Joe. He's here somewhere. Okay? So thank you very much. If you're interested, I have a few cards, and you can get the password and try out the system. I'll be happy to give you guys a card. I have about 20, so don't take too many. Okay, thank you.